Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Van Diesel by your Card Fan Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe, and subscribe. This time we're covering set 13, Keter Sanctuary, Alden. So, I call this, in my mind, the forgettable deck, because when I was setting up my deck profiles for this week, and I kept doing the math to see how many deck profiles were going to be involved, I kept constantly forgetting one. Guess who that one was? You guessed it, Alden. That's not to say Alden's a bad deck, it's just that, like, he's so forgettable in my mind that I just actively didn't remember him until I finally had to set up his deck profile so I could make sure I knew about it. Anyways, though, Alden's pretty much very interesting. You know, he originally was the rear guard for Bastion, then he turned into a main grade 3 that's actually really solid, and basically is a fresh remembrance of basically what kind of like V/OG was, where a card could have a rear guard skill but basically still be a main grade 3 Vanguard if it needed to be, which in this case is slightly different, but still. So let's go and get started and see what we got. First today, we have our starter and Knight of Heavenly Admired Adamus, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base, auto road opponent 1 second draw a card, stands nothing special about, just a free draw if you win second. All around, he's pretty solid. None of the ride line really requires him, but like, look at him. He's just like such a cool knight. He's got that nice red hair. He's got like the little feathered cap crest thing on his head, and then he's got like his small little cute knight sword. It's just all around amazing, so I like running Adamus as my starter. Then of course we have our triggers. First we run over trigger and True Arbitrator Dragon of 100 Swords Duravaso, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Over trigger, you melee over trigger in your deck, run a vote as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one mutes, it gets plus 1 melee for the turn, and if you vote it during your drive check, activate its additional effect which you get until end of turn. You can also perform drive checks for the battles your rear guards attack. All around pretty solid, because when you do drive checks with rear guards, while yes, that's not necessarily an instant game winner unless you're just going to see crit after crit after crit, but it does allow you to, you know, add a lot more cards to your hand and therefore be able to counterattack a lot. So not only does it help increase the hand, but also with the way this deck works, it wants to throw as much hand as possible in the early game. So being able to get that back is nice, but again, also being able to go on a pretty much offensive run and just see a bunch of crits in the back-to-back is pretty nice as well. So one of Duravaso, you can make this on Tino because they have the same skill, or you can do Volnut for more consistent multi-attack, or Asphoria for returning units back to hand. But I prefer Duravaso because A, this deck has main grade 3s with swords, and we have Dragon with swords, and B, I just like using the overs to the respective nations. Then move on to our normal trigger. So we run 3 copies of Protection Magic Pro B. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base, continuous guard circle. If your opponent's vanguards are grade 3 or greater, 5k shield. So 10k shield, which is nice to have, and not to mention the fact that it can increase the hand as a draw trigger again is very helpful. This deck runs through its hand cards again in the early game very quickly, so being able to help increase it so we can be fine towards the later stages of it is nice to have. So 3 of Pro B for the guard power. Now you may be wondering, if I keep complaining about that so much, why did I only run 3 draws? Well, this is why. 8 crits. So Violation Rigor Dragon, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. You know what they say, when defense, you can either go defense or you can go offense. The best defense is a great offense, and a great offense is a great offense, because fuck defense. Yeah, that's pretty much what we're going with here. So Violation Rigor Dragon, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. This can really be any critical trigger you want. I just prefer Violation Rigor because I don't even use him in Youthberg, because my Youthberg deck doesn't run more than 2 crits, and I make those crits Blade Feathers, so might as well run them in Alden. And then speaking of Blade Feather Dragon, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power, critical trigger, auto rear then battle, boost it, put it to soul, choose one mutes, and gets 2k for the turn. Okay, this is actually helpful because this deck can also, like, if you open very specifically, you will definitely run into a soul problem. It's like the Nirvana deck from before, where you could either see none of the big soul blasters, or you can see all the big soul blasters. That what Blade Feather is basically for, to help fix it if you run into the big soul blasters. Also, if you call it from any of the ride line skill, because while it does suck to lose a trigger, at least unlike the Bastion ride line, you get a benefit because you get to pick which cards you call, and then if you have to call trigger, you can hopefully call Blade Feather to at least mitigate the soul problem. So 8 crits for a lot of pressure, and then the 3 draws to, you know, help increase hand and add defensive power. Then we have 4 heals and Recuperate Angel. Grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power, standard heal. Now, it's just a free 15k shield. You can pick any heal you want, really, but I prefer the 15k shield vanillas over the 10k skilled heal triggers because, like, you know, there are 10k shields in most situations, only 25k shields in specific situations. So I'd rather have the consistent 15k over the fluctuating 10 to 25, but I mean, take it as you will, but I will prefer Recuperate over the counter heal, so 4 of. Then we move on to our grade 1s, storing 2 copies of Diffuser Angel, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, AK Bays, auto when placed on the rear guard circle. You can put any hand card to soul to choose one of your vanguards, and that and this unit both get plus 5k power on a turn. All around pretty solid because, you know, again, this deck can run into soul problems, so being able to get a free soul card is great, but also being able to amp up the vanguard and itself more is great, especially because at the end of the day, you will not prioritize boosting the vanguard, you will prioritize boosting the rear guards. So, you know, any free power up you can give to the vanguard is a great addition, especially if it does get you a soul. The only downside is it costs you a hand card, but a hand card is something I'm willing to pay if it gives himself and the vanguard plus 5. Also, Diffuser Angel, not just in this deck, but like in other decks, has won me a handful of games, either because he got me a soul or because of that 5k. So 2 of him, he actually has proven his worth to me. And move on to our 4 copies of Sage of Civilization Fyron, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, AK base. One of the best archetypal quote-unquote countercharges I've ever seen. Auto when placed on rearguard circle, it gets plus 2k friend of turn. So just by simply being placed, doesn't matter if it's by van ability, by rearguard ability, doesn't matter if it's normal call, superior call, doesn't matter when, it gets plus 2k for free, so it's a 10k base during that turn. And then if you have a unit with Alden's card name on your board, doesn't matter if it's vanguard, rearguard, hell, guard circle, as long as you have a unit on your board with Alden's card name, ditch a hand card, countercharge 1. All around pretty solid because, you know, it's just swapping a hand card for damage, which can come back to screw you if your hand is, you know, very concise or like very constricted like mine typically is. But I mean, if you have the hand card to spare, you need it for the CB, because I promise you that if you're going to use it on CB, you're probably going to get it right back considering what you're probably going to spend that CB on. But, you know, being able to basically get back the counterblast for free is all around pretty solid. So 4 or 5 are just very solid grade 1 who's a 10k base second she's plays and can literally get you a counter charge for the simple sake of a discard regardless of if your Vanguard's an Alden or not, as long as Alden's somewhere on your board. 4 or 5 run. And then we have 4 copies of our PG and Paladini Z Dragon. Grade 1, boost 0, so it's K base, continuous sentinel. You may only have up to 4 sentinels in deck, now it's put on guard circle. Choose one of your units, it cannot be hit till in a battle. And if your hand has 2 or more cards in it, choose a card from your hand, discard it, standard PG. Nothing specified, basically that means if this and only one of the cards you place on guard circle, you don't have discard, which is great, because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game, basically rush with these 2, and then when your opponent counterattacks you in the late game, because again, hand is very constricted, you can just throw this down and you'll be safe. All around, Paladini Z Dragon is just a very solid PG. I like running him. You can run Aegis Matter because they have the exact same skill, but I prefer Paladini Z Dragon because he came out closer to the time of Alden's release, so I run him over Aegis Matter. Also because Aegis Matter is a horse. Then we have our last grade 1 of in the ride deck, none in the main deck, of my opinion, the most disappointing ride line ever. Not because I hate their skills. I love their skills to death. Why I call them disappointing is because these guys, in my mind, could have been the ride line for Graham Grace. And I hated the Graham Grace ride line because it's the most generic ride line ever. They gave us 4 sets of waiting for the Graham Grace line just to be straight up generic when they could have given us as pack for like I've been asking since like set, what, 4? But no, they wait to give us that. And then we finally get an actually generic ride line fully, but they could have definitely fit as Graham Grace theme, but instead we're giving it to Alden, who in my mind is kind of forgettable. Again, not hating on him, I'm just making a point. Anyways, Net of Heavenly Lasting Tranquilla, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto and Rotapon reveal 3 different grades from your hand. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You have to 1 grade 1 as unit card from one of them, call it to rearguard circle and shuffle the deck. And if you do not call, you may call this card to rearguard instead. All around pretty solid because you know, it's revealing any 3 different grades, so it doesn't have to be specifically unit cards. So if you have orders in hand, you can do that. But being able to check top 5 and call anything, granted it has to be a grade 1 or less, which for some reason, whenever I play this, it's always mostly triggers with him or PGs. And then whenever I use Sortia's skill, I don't pull any grade 2s, but I pull decent grade 1s that would have been useful the turn before. But anyways, being able just to call any grade 1 or less is great. And again, this is typically where if you have to call Blade Feather, because maybe you can kind of already see where your hand's going to go with the Soul Blast, you might want to call that Blade Feather just to get that free soul. But also, worst case scenario, if you can't call something because maybe it's just all triggers, you can just call Tranquil instead, again, being aware that you might be causing yourself a CB problem. Either way, though, very solid grade 1. Top 5 search, you can call either something or call himself. So, one of in the ride deck, sided on the main deck. They really could have just given him like a 2k rearguard skill just in case, but it's not too bad. Then move on to our grade 2s. 3 copies of Night of Rendering Flash Caribre. Believe it or not, even though this thing takes up soul, for some reason the games that I see Caribre are the games that I end up with less of a soul problem. It doesn't make sense, believe it or not, but it somehow does, which I don't understand. Anyways, grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base, moon in the background. Auto when placed on rear guard circle, Chiron boss 1, soul boss 1, check top 3, look, choose up to 1 card from them, reveal it, call it to rear guard, and if it's a grade 2 unit card, and if it's not, put it to your hand and shuffle your deck. So, it doesn't matter what it is, it's either going to board or it's going to hand, which I love about this, because it's basically Cherish and Lattice skill from Magnolia's ride line, just better. The downside is it costs a CB and a soul, but like I said, somehow this deck, whenever I pull Caribre and play him, I don't run into soul problems, specifically when I play 2 of them. Because the thing is, he can call himself, and unlike every other unit that has a superior call ability, it can actually proc off by calling itself, since it can be placed from anywhere by any means, and it can call itself from its skill. So R1 Caribre is a pretty solid grade 2, can get more rear guards onto the board for a simple cost, and it just allows you to board rush your opponent starting right at grade 2, and if you can't board rush them, then you're probably setting up for next turn. So all around, very solid grade 2. I like him a lot, and he has a moon in the background, so I have bias towards that as well. So easy 3-up for me. Then, of course, we have 3 copies of Sharpness Knight Airmac, a grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base. This card, in my opinion, is really solid, because auto, when placed on the rear guard circle, if you have a unit with Alden and its card name on your board, again, doesn't matter if it's Vanguard or rear guard, it gets plus 5k power for the turn, so cool, free 15k base. And then if it was placed by a card ability, it gets plus 15, by your card ability specifically, it gets plus 15 instead of plus 5. So this thing is a 25k base if you call it via either of the 2 Alden's abilities or Caribre's ability and you're on an Alden. So, you know, 25k swing is not something to laugh at, especially because if you boost it with anything, it's immediately a 33k base, as long as it's not a trigger you're boosting with. Like, all around, Airmac is a very just solid beat stick. It does his job well, and he works as what I like to call soul fodder for our main grade 3 that we want on rear guard, and same with Caribre. So, you know, he's actually a very solid grade 2. Like, you don't have to feel bad about getting rid of him, and like the second he's placed, he is literally a 15k drop unless your opponent pulls triggers. So 3 of Airmac, just good beat stick, and there's not much more I can say about him. And then we have 4 copies of Magic of Alteration Tunar, grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base. She has the weirdest timing in this deck, considering like when I use her, I will have just under, or when I would want to use her, I have just under the CB to proc off her effect, but then afterwards, I'm going to have, like, too much CB left to handle with, or too little CB left to handle with for the next turn, if there is a next turn. So anyways, her skill, auto rear guard at the end of battle that's unit attacked while boosted. If your damage on 3 or more face down cards, put a soul counter charge 1. All around pretty solid. It doesn't have to attack a Vanguard for that skill. It can attack anything as long as she is boosted, but the fact that she's a free counter charge and a soul charge, which literally makes Alden main grade 3 free, and cuts the other one in half, is just all around amazing. She's a solid 4, and again, the only reason why I don't like her is just because with the plays that I want to do sometimes, I will always be just 1 under that CB count because it has to be 3 or more. I'll always be at just 2 to where I can't use her skill, but the next turn I'll end up having put myself to 4, and unless I draw another copy of her, I'm not going to have like enough CB to do my thing, or if I do, I'm basically not going to have CB for the rest of the match until I draw either her or another copy of Fireon. So, all around, very solid card. 4 of, I wish she showed up more consistently when I wanted her to proc off her effect, but she's still a nice card for countercharging and soul charging, so easy 4 for me. Then we move on to our last grade 2, one of in the ride deck, none in the main deck, of, again, a card that I wish was just Graham Grace's ride line. Not to say his skill is bad, because it is really good, and that's why I want it to be Graham Grace's ride line, whatever. And that is Clear Sky Knight Sodius. I really love his wings. I don't know why. And his bow, which just looks beautiful to me. Grade 2 set 5k shield, 10k base. Auto and Rotapon reveal 3 different grades from your hand. Look the top 5 cards of your deck to 1 grade 2 less unit card from them. Call it to rear guard, circle, shuffle the deck. And if you do not call a card, you may call this card to rear guard. So it's literally the same thing as Tranquilla, except the difference is it just calls a grade 2 or less instead of a grade 1 or less. But, you know, being able to, again, call rear guards is great. And like I said earlier, how it ends up working for me is when I check the top 5 from his skill, it tends to be all triggers and PGs. So I either call himself or I just call a trigger, and typically that's a Blade Feather, or a Violation Rigor, because I don't want to call a PG and or a heal trigger. And then as for him, I will still see triggers and PGs, but I'll typically see like Fireon, who I would have wanted 5 seconds ago, but no, that's not how the world works for me. But either way, though, very solid card. Again, I do wish he had a rear guard skill to have more benefit out of calling himself to rear guard, like even if it's just like a simple plus 2k or 3k or 5k skill, but hey, he's still a very solid grade 2 nonetheless. So one of them in the red deck, none in the main deck. Then move on to our grade 3s. Run 3 copies of Grand Heavenly Sword Alden. I'm actually surprised by this. I thought I ran 4 of him, but I guess it makes sense that I run 3. Anyways, grade 3 Tunar Persona 13k base. Auto when placed on the rear guard circle by any means. Counter Blast 2 and Soul Blast 1. This is where all of your resources will get eaten up at. Choose a card from your hand, call it to rear guard. If you call it a grade 3, draw 2 cards. So, you can do this one of 2 ways. You could either play this deck the consistent way, and choose this version of it, by the way, and choose to run Alden and basically call him during the main phase to get hand cards and basically proc off Tunar consistently. Or you can do what I do and try to use him in the battle phase, get 5 attacks, which does happen consistently, but in exchange you basically miss the timing of Tunar almost every single time, which sucks for you, but I mean, A, that's the case. Or you can just do option C and then not run Alden and then never have a CV problem or soul problem. I swear to you, this card's literally the only reason that I have a CV and soul problem. The one game I never saw a single copy of this grade 3, I literally did not have a CV problem, I did not have a soul problem, I could do whatever the hell I wanted, so I'm just saying that now. Anyways, though, being able to call down a grade 3 during any point is great, and also get a free 2 draws out of it, but it's not just call a grade 3, it's call anything. Only if you call a grade 3 you get 2 draws, and that helps out a lot, especially when you're on not Grand Heavenly Sword that connects the heavens and earth Alden, because that means you can get multi-attack from 4 to 5 attacks each turn, which is nice. And then auto rear guard when he attacks into anything. If you have 3 or more grade 3 units, he gets some psychic power for the turn. Cool. If he counts himself, which he does, then also with the Vanguard, that's 2. All you need is 1 more, and you typically will if you do what I do and just call a bunch of grade 3s during the battle phase. Then he'll be a 23 or 18k swing on his own, which all around is nice to have. It's not an amazingly broken number. It's definitely not as powerful as it is in Bastion, who can restand him and also get more grade 3s out on the board more consistently to proc off his draw skills and power skills. But he is still very solid grade 3 to run in this deck for at least numbers, beat stick, and multi-attack prowess. So 3 of Grand Heavenly Sword Alden, even if he does eat up a little bit of our resources. Then we have 4 copies of the thing that is mandatory at 4 copies, at least in this version of the deck, to get the soul problem between him, and that is Clear Skies Dragon, Light Leads Dragon. Grade 3 Tunar Persona 13k base, continuous rear guard. If you have used Alden's card name on your board, it gets boost again, and that's why I love all these support cards. None of them require it to be on Vanguard Circle, so if you wanted to, you could just shove all of these cards into any deck that has Alden at probably a 4 of, like this one for example, and then all of their abilities will still proc off, which is great. Anyways, grade 3 with boost is nice to have, so combos all with him if you don't want to kill your front row, want to keep Tunar for, instead of going for multi-attack, you go for bigger numbers. And then auto rear guard, at the end of battle, this unit attack or boosted anything into anything by putting another rear guard on the same column as it to soul. Choose one of your units with Alden's card and it gets with 10k power for the turn. All around pretty solid. How I like to do it is I like to call Alden to one column, probably the emptier column if there is an empty column, and then I like to call light leads to the other, hopefully with something behind it. Lightly after I do my drive check with the Vanguard, then light lead swing after light lead swings, whether it hit or not, because it can be an attack while not being boosted. I send the back row unit into soul in order to give the Alden plus 10,000 power, then I swing with that Alden. Typically beforehand, I'll have called light lead somewhere on my board before I bounce something with Alden's skill, this Alden skill, and then I would have boosted with it, put the other front row unit into soul, got more numbers, and then bounced it via his skill to call both of them. So all around, light lead's pretty good. He pretty much gets the soul cost for both of them down easily. And not to mention the fact he makes for just like a good swinger or boosting target, and he just ups the power of either of the 2 Aldens by a free 10k. So all around, there's nothing really not to like about him. He's just an awesome 4 of, and I cannot say anything more. Then we have last card of the deck, 3 in the main deck, 1 in the right deck, and Sword that connects the heavens and earth, Alden. Grade 3 Tunar Persona 13k base, act Vanguard Circle once per turn. By Counter Blasting 1 and Soul Blasting 1, you can choose up to 1 grade 3 less card from your hand, call it to rear guard. If you call it a card, you draw 2. That is a free draw 2. Like, it is just this, but cheaper, and it doesn't matter what you call, you get a draw 2 out of it. Which again, is what I love, the fact that they made a rear guard into a Vanguard, but then also upgraded his skill to where it's just a cheaper cost, and you still get the full effect off regardless of what you call. And then auto Vanguard, the part of this that makes it slightly harder, when this unit attacks into anything, if you have 3 or more different original grades on your board with rear guards, so that's where light leads kind of becomes a problem, because if you don't have the different grades on board, and you send all of your stuff to soul, you begin to have problems with this skill, but that's why you got to play it smart. You eventually get used to it, but when you first start playing it, at least for me, it was kind of hard to keep track of it. But then it's like really quick to get used to. Anyway, Soul Boss 1, to choose one of your rear guards and return it to the hand, and then choose 2 unit cards from your hand with the sum of their grades being less than or equal to the original grade of the unit returned to your hand. Call into rear guard circle as the same column as each other. So you can't get multi-attack off of his skill inherently, or like 5 attacks, you can get 4 attacks off his skill inherently. But again, that's where Alden comes in, you just call light leads from it. But all around, pretty solid. Like, it's a simple Soul Blast to get multi-attack. If you do what Jinky did in the anime, you're pretty much getting more numbers out of it by calling Air Mac into Firon. You could also do Caribre into Firon, or like just Caribre flat and use Caribre skill, because he can be placed at any point to call something from the top 3. Like, this deck has 2 different ways of getting multi-attack. Believe it or not, though, I've only ever been able to pull that off once. Not because I've had an Alden in hand all the other times, just because I never have Caribre in my hand when I would try that skill, because I mainly call it down in the early game. But, you know, being able to bounce a rear guard and get more multi-attack out of it is great, because you either get more numbers, or again, Alden into this thing with the front row, you get more attacks out of it. All around, Sword That Connects having the Earth Alden is just very solid. And the best part is, because they have to combine the grades, you know, if you bounce, for example, Light Leads, which you most likely will, you can get a grade 2 and a grade 1. Or you can do what I did one time, because I had no choice, call a grade 3 and call a grade 0, because that's still grade 3. So, yeah, all around, pretty solid, just a very good card. Gets multi-attack, at least probably procs off 2 units, whether it's via his own full skill, or because it's Alden and or Caribre making another unit. And then, of course, he just gets a Counter Boss 1, Soul Boss 1, call something, get 2 cards to draw, which is all around pretty solid. So 3 for the main deck, 1 for the ride deck, very solid grade 3. And without further ado, that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck is fun to play. It has an amazing ride line in terms of aesthetic. It's, like, very nice that they finally made a rear guard grade 3, an iconic rear guard grade 3, into a main grade 3 unit, and, like, basically upgraded his skills to the next level. Still gave him multi-attack capabilities, but also still gave him defensive capabilities. Gave us a lot of support cards that are actually generically splashable, because none of them require Alden to be on the Vanguard circle, just somewhere on the board. And it just has, like, a good amount of cards that can just send stuff to Soul and basically go from 0 rear guards to full board in about 5 seconds. So without further ado, I'm going to here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, just follow the Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.